in defense of Doug Ford here, if the Neskantaga First Nations wanted to get in touch with him, they could have simply bought a plate at his daughter's Stag and Doe, or donated potentially thousands of dollars to get his ear. So, silly of them to try to go through the proper channels in order to get the attention of Doug Ford. It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Ontario, yesterday. Exciting news. Neskantaga Chief-elect Chris Munias and current Chief Wayne Munias disrupted the Ontario House of Parliament, and they were kicked out over some kind of exciting reasons. We have the video here, so we're gonna start off by watching that. This is all over the First Nations opposition to the Ring of Fire, which is the mining development that they want to do in northern Ontario. I haven't watched this video yet, but this is been seen by over 200,000 people, which is exciting. People are kind of getting more aware of this story. So I believe what he's saying there is no Ring of Fire. It's the audio and the video is not good quality. No Ring of Fire. I think he's saying there, you're not crossing our river. And there's Doug Ford being an absolute coward and not even looking at them. Our people's lives are important. Okay, so obviously you're not allowed to disrupt the House of Parliament's proceedings, but that's what happened in this case. I think it is a deserved reason, though, because it is a protest. So there is an article here from the Narwhal that has some great pictures of the Neskantaga First Nation standing in solidarity together. So this was an organized protest, and there are some very moving testimonials that are coming as a result of this. Globe and Mail also has some coverage on it. You can see again just how many people showed up in solidarity. I believe it was about 80 people from different First Nations communities who are doing this protest. So 2 senior leaders of an Ontario First Nation were escorted out of the provincial legislature Wednesday after loudly accusing Premier Doug Ford's government of failing to consult them about mining in northern Ontario's Ring of Fire region. The Ring of Fire, located about 550 kilometers northeast of Thunder Bay. So this is like really, really north. Has been a focus for the provincial government since significant mineral deposits were discovered there in 2006. So, of course, this is the Canadian way, the colonial way of being like, oh, wow, there's these nations that exist, and except we don't really care about them until we find out that they're sitting on or close to a critical mineral deposit that suddenly we need in order to complete our green transition. So, of course, we believe in a green transition and it's something we advocate for, but it should not come at the expense of ongoing genocide against First Nations people. Currently, 6 provincial and federal environmental studies are underway. Mr. Ford's government has pledged $1 billion and repeatedly asked the federal government to match its commitment. At least 9 Indigenous communities are being consulted. 2 of them, Martin Falls First Nation and Wabeki First Nation, are broadly in favor of the development. However, several other First Nations whose traditional territories overlap on the Ring of Fire are vehemently opposed and argue they have not been adequately consulted. So, This is, of course, new guy. What are you saying? Don't even think indigenous people had problems with alcoholism and addictions until Europeans came into the picture. Yeah, of course. A lot of these problems are systemic and the result of colonialism. The leaders of Neskantaga First Nation and 4 other First Nations, as well as about 80 community members, traveled to Queen's Park from Northern Ontario and pleaded with Mr. Ford on Wednesday to put the brakes on mining developments. There will not be a ring of fire. There has been no free and prior informed consent, Christopher Munias, incoming chief of Neskantaga, told Mr. Ford from the gallery in Ontario's legislature on Wednesday. Doug Ford, you come and meet me. So this is an exact quote here of Christopher Munias really just calling out Doug Ford and saying, hey, like, come talk to me, meet me, essentially leader to leader, nation to nation. And, Doug Ford, you can see in the video that we just watched that he's just like looking forward, pretending that this isn't a problem for him. By the vibe that I'm getting, it seems like Doug Ford is going to ignore this. Mr. Munias was escorted out of the room shortly after. Wayne Munias, the current chief of Neskantaga, who joined Christopher in a chant against the Ring of Fire, was also escorted out. And, we have some great pictures here from the narwhal. You can see the exact moment when they were escorted out as well. So it's like right here. Kudos to the photographer here, who is taking some great photos. There's also a map here of the proposed projects. You can see that they want to build these roads, and again, they have not done the proper consulting, but all of a sudden they're interested in these communities. So there are other communities that are raising these issues, including Grassy Narrows Chief Rudy Turtle. Grassy Narrows is another First Nations community that said hundreds of thousands of hectares in additional claims have been staked over the past year or so in its traditional territories, and that is having a detrimental environmental impact. He said the community doesn't want any mining development, fearing it would harm the environment and the land which the community depends on for sustenance. Grassy Narrows has waged a decades-long battle after a paper mill dumped large amounts of mercury into its rivers in the 1960s and 1970s, contaminating the First Nations rivers and supply of fish, and leaving many of its population suffering health effects from mercury poisoning. So this is just an example of what happens when you favor industry over First Nations autonomy, and look at the negative effects that this has had. So of course it's important to go through the proper consultation with these communities and respect their sovereignty. Currently, mining claims can be staked in Ontario without consultation. However, Grassy Narrows would like to change this. Earlier this month, Neskantaga warned Ring of Fire Metals, the Australian mining company bent on developing the region, and it's like, okay, it's like, why even outsource this to an Australian company? I don't even understand. It's just like colonialism all over the world working together to smash the rights of Indigenous peoples. That it will have to use force against members of the First Nation before it would allow development. Now, the exact quote that the Globe and Mail here is being too much of a coward to print is that you're going to have to kill us.
You're not going to cross our river system without our free, prior, informed consent. You're going to have to kill us. You're going to have to do more than just getting access from the province of Ontario.
Okay, so this is how real they are in standing up against Ontario. They're like, you're going to have to kill us. You're going to have to come to our nation and continue your colonial genocide against us if you really want to develop this land. Neskantaga said it was unable to participate in consultations on the Ring of Fire or meet the process's deadlines, in part because of the COVID-19 pandemic. With a population of just 400, Neskantaga is located about 430 kilometers northeast of Thunder Bay and is among the most impoverished places in Canada. The First Nation has been under a boil water advisory for more than 28 years. So this is something that just pisses me off is like, okay, well, suddenly we're gonna like build a road for this rural First Nations community. Suddenly, for some reason, all of a sudden, the government in Ontario cares about this community and they're trying to build infrastructure into this community. But why? Not so that they can help them have clean drinking water, which they've been under a boil water advisory for 28 years, but so that they can extract critical minerals out of their community and use them as a win to develop, I don't know, electric cars, which seems to be like the new big thing that Ontario wants to do. So really gross. Lots of people coming out here on Twitter in support of the Neskantaga First Nation. There was the MPP, what's his name, Soul, Merritt Stiles, also came out saying that I guess she talked to some of the protesters and activists from different First Nations who were there in solidarity. So this, I suppose, is good. I feel like colonialism has this way of like, oh, if not Doug Ford, then why don't we work with Merritt Stiles? And we don't really know what the results would be. Merritt Stiles here is saying, though, what a pleasure to join leadership and members from Kitchener, Kusib, Inunwug, Grassy Narrows, Wepakeka, Neskantaga, and Muskrat Dam this afternoon. All resource projects in Ontario must have the free, prior, and informed consent from affected Indigenous communities. And honestly, like, that is like kind of the sense that I get, like they're asking for proper consultation. I'm sure if you were to help some of these communities, like have some other infrastructure wins, like clean drinking water, then maybe they would be willing to play ball with you, right? But the problem is that they're just trying to like pave over their rights and their sovereignty. They need to just consult with them. They're not even saying you can never do this. They're just saying, hey, you need to consult with us. And the fact that Doug Ford is just like staring off into oblivion as if this is not something that affects him on even an emotional level is really concerning. So Emma McIntosh also doing a great a piece about this in the Narwhal. Today, the 4 First Nations took the fight to protect their territories from mining to Queen's Park. I wrote about why they traveled so far to do this, Premier Ford's refusal to acknowledge them. Moments earlier, amid question period, NDP MPP Sol Mamakwa had asked Premier Doug Ford if he would meet with the chiefs seated above to hear their concerns. A sit-down they said they'd been seeking for weeks. Ford didn't answer, deferring to another minister instead. So in defense of Doug Ford here, if the Neskantaga First Nations wanted to get in touch with him, they could have simply bought a plate at his daughter's stag and doe, or donated potentially thousands of dollars to get his ear. So silly of them to try to go through the proper channels in order to get the attention of Doug Ford. Our people's lives are important, said Wayne Munias, who is the outgoing chief. And again, repeating the words, no ring of fire, no ring of fire. Almost everyone agrees that roads would upend life for First Nations in the Ring of Fire region, but different leaders and individuals within each community have varying views on what should happen and whether governments and industry have gone about it the right way. Again, this is not just First Nations versus Ontario. These are many different nations who have diverse opinions about what they want to see happen. So you need to respect all of those voices. My concern here is that the Wabeki and Martin Falls First Nations are the ones that have been consulted with because they are the ones who are on board with these projects. And maybe it benefits them in ways that it doesn't benefit different First Nations. So it's really important to just hear all of these voices. You can see in this red is these red splotches. That is the Ring of Fire mining claims as of December 10th, 2021. You can see a supply road here to Wabeki. Maybe that benefits them in a way that does not benefit Neskantaga. Because they're also suggesting these other road links, this yellow road and this green road, which to me looks like a snake it looks like an angry snake to the Martin Falls Community Access Road. So Martin Falls gets a road. Wabeki gets a road. Neskantaga is saying, you're not going to cross our river, right? Which is, you can see the river here, and they want to build a road over this river. So it's really kind of interesting, and you can see where this is in relationship to Thunder Bay. It's a trouser snake. It's Doug Ford's trouser snake. Really, just he's gets a little erect when it comes to destroying the rights of First Nations peoples. Neskantaga says the nation, which is also handling crises with youth suicides and long-term boil water advisories caused by the ongoing impacts of colonization, needs more than government emails and updates. Its members need time and resources to truly absorb the various proposals and options. They also need consultations to be held in the community and in Anishinaabemoan, the language spoken by many who live there. So yeah, it's just like it's not even like they're saying, hey, you're never gonna do this, but they're just saying like, you need to consult us. And maybe if you do things like help them deal with the ongoing crises that are a result of colonization, and you give them the resources in the language that they speak, maybe you can get your way. But it's just like the Doug Ford government is just trying to ram through this mining project without doing any of that work. He wants to destroy my territory. He should come talk to me, Chris Muniz said of Ford. So that's what he's saying. Come talk to me, and Ford, why not? Why are you scared to just talk? Bedabun Muniz, who I've also seen referred to as B. Muniz, is a young member of Neskantaga First Nation with a message for the premier. This is to Doug Ford, she said with tears running down her cheeks. Think about us. Think about our next generation. What if we lose our culture? What if we lose our land? I don't want to lose our land. So really impassioned speech here from a young member of this First Nation. Indigenous nations vow to fight the surge of mining claims after recent policy changes. And this is again highlighting the Grassy Narrows chief, Rudy Turtle, said he was at Queen's Park on Wednesday as well to remind the government that his nation has been very clear on where it stands when it comes to resource extraction in their territory. So, we do hope that Doug Ford grows a set of balls and is able to meet with the First Nations who just want to be consulted about this. There's more here. Alvin Fiddler, a former Grand Chief of Anishinaabe Aski First Nation, who was there to speak on behalf of Muskrat Dam First Nation. He said he is also alarmed about the flurry of mining claims being staked on the nation's territory. He said he had come to Queen's Park to remind the government that it does not have the authority to infringe on Indigenous rights, which he said it has done over and over. If we allow industry in Ontario to trample upon our communities, things will get a lot worse in communities, Fiddler said. That's why we're here to remind Ontario that we're here, that they exist, that you need to talk to us. So, we hope to see some movement on this issue, and it's really great to see this impassioned protest and speech and First Nations standing up against Doug Ford. It's a reminder as well that sometimes it's the most marginalized people in Canada who are tasked with standing up to bullies like Doug Ford, and realistically, this is something that we should all be doing collectively, because Doug Ford wants to develop more than just Indigenous territory, but also even the white land protectors who are trying to protect the Greenbelt and who have tried to are not even able to do that. So it will take the collective of us to stop this evil Doug Ford government. And this is the moment where you put the clown emojis in chat. All right, there we go. Why not make sure you don't miss the next video by liking, commenting, subscribing, and ringing the bell? Thank you so much for watching. It's my homie, too, Taro. Peace.